what Ovan was searching for. It's you, Haseo. The key of Twilight is you.
Now that we've lost the epitaph of rebirth, we would be destroyed if we tried to fight it head-on.
Yeah, Plan A against Cubia is a frontal assault, but as it is, all 8 phases together would be needed to just match Cubia's power. And with Ovan gone, that's straight out. So, we go to Plan B. Divine Intervention!
There was once a goddess watching over the world.
You thought I was kidding, didn't you?
Aura.
Yes, Haseo remembers the tale of Aura, and since Hulgranz is the only place of R1 that remained totally untouched, bar the loss of her statue, it suggested that may be where they may be able to make a connection. Aina comes with, revealing she has the last book from the Creator's Room, which Ovan would read to her.
And my favorite one, the one he read to me the most, was the Epitaph of Twilight.
Damn it! You have no idea how much some fans of this series wanted a completed version of that, simply for some of the lore involved.
But upon speaking the tome's name, does it resonate? Not just with Aina, but with Haseo. For Haseo has become the key of Twilight that will call Aura back to the world, revealing Skaith in its admittedly lackluster third form, and pouring the data of the phases into the book. It does not call Aura, but the Azure Knights. Once more, it's a face-off against unfinished business. The Knights not an easy battle, mainly as Yada's part of the party, and since we only are now able to use him, yeah, his stats and skill levels aren't up to par. But in the middle of the battle,
Stop at once!
the Divine intervenes. Yes, the Knights are Aura's, and obey her will. But Aura no longer cares for this world more than passively, choosing not to intercede, and telling them their best way out requires Ovan. Even giving up the powers of the other 7 epitaphs to save Cubia wouldn't work without him. So there's no comparable breaking the bracelet solution to Cubia this time.
I am the one who remains asleep. I have no power to decide the future of this world.
You know, I've always thought of that as a dick move on Aura's part, but it actually fits one of the more popular workings of the model of artificial intelligence, that of rampancy. Aura in this case showing the stage of melancholy, disinterested in its pursuits. This is important more with respect to Link than right here, but it's an interesting little tidbit to contemplate, that the ultimate AI may not be as stable as considered.
So really, it's down to the players to shape the miracle divinity cannot bring.
The future of this world will be decided by you players of the game. By people. The future of the world lies at the ends of human will.
For their multiple fights, Azure Kite gives up his weapons, the Empty Skies, the game's best twin blades. But as Aura's spirit leaves, she wishes the people of the world well, hoping they succeed. Players have begun to notice the disturbances, evacuating the servers, and even Makanu becoming unstable. So, it's time to leave. Everyone evacuating to Netslum, where the Serpent of Lore reroutes all server activity. That nuclear meltdown thing I mentioned? Yeah, that's still a thing, and getting worse as Cubia's Gomoras degrade all types of data planet-wide.
You know, I get what they are trying to do here. I do. Show the dangers of unchecked viruses and system bugs and all this other stuff that inevitably causes by technology outpacing the intelligence to properly use it. I do. And I get the nuclear allegory, because no one takes more seriously the threat of nuclear annihilation than Japan does. But here's the thing. People are not that stupid to hook up the control systems of a nuclear reactor to fucking Wi-Fi. To my knowledge, they are intentionally kept as isolated systems to prevent this kind of thing, because it would be ridiculously bad for someone to infect it with a virus or worm program with the kind of people out there on the internet these days that would melt it down just for the lulz. I hate humanity sometimes. Hell, the control systems for nuclear missiles in America are so old now, it is literally impossible for current computers to interface with them, as the programs in modern computers are far too complex for said systems to even understand.
So, while I get the intent, stopping Cubia will literally save the planet from annihilation via widespread radiation poisoning, a hell of a lot greater threat than a worldwide system crash that will just leave a bunch of comatose people dead, it's where the series finally hits that moment where suspension of disbelief breaks.
And think about that for a second. This is the series with a video game whose core programming is meant to naturally develop stable AI. Said AI has the powers of a goddess. Google Glass can be used as a conduit to suck your consciousness out of your body, and these guys just finished off an entity that has the ability to screw up and control the emotional core of a person. And this is what breaks the fantasy of the setting.
However, there's something else within this exposition dump, and it's a pretty big damn issue.
Yeah, but this is the year 2017!
If the network dies, people's lives, cities, even countries won't be able to function.
Right there. You all heard that, right? You saw it? That the characters speaking dialogue not being showcased by the subtitling? This is the thing that really pissed me off about this entry. And it's not the fault of the fucking game or the actors, it's of the localization team. And why I gave slack to the very minor errors in Rebirth and Reminisce. Because everybody can make a mistake. We don't get quartered to the blatant inability to do your job.
This happens repeatedly in this section of the game, and there is no explanation. None, aside from sheer incompetence for this occurring. I have never seen nor heard of this happening in any other game.
Whoever put this in blatantly ignored the scripting for the subtitles. They had it. We know they had it because the correct dialogue is being spoken by the voice actors. There is no excuse for this. At all.
Anyways, the big issue right now is not Cubia itself, but the Gamoras, which are multiplying at an exponential rate within the world. If they can head off their growth, less damage will be incurred from the rest of the network, and it would allow them to not only track down Cubia's main body, but have a far easier time against it.
You want us to take that mess on, one at a time?
Yes!
But Haseo stirs them with a speech that equates to, they haven't even tried to fight yet, and they decide to bring every other player in on this to bolster their numbers.
Which makes sense. There isn't any special power required to fight the Gamora.
This is also likely inspired by Aura's words, that the fate of the world rests with the players. And it's not up to this small group to decide its fate alone. While we wait, however, if you went the convince Saku to stay route, a small scene happens here that tells the audience that you're not going to get rid of her that easily. With the at-home move to Net Slum, cheat alchemy is now available, able to use key items called cheat codes to upgrade any, and I do mean any piece of equipment. Rare equipment gets a cheat level added to it that goes beyond its normal limitations. Zelkova's message, tempered by Haseo's words, go out to the players, and calls literally everyone with an account back, as the Gamoras cluster around the Lost Grounds, warranting each need to be area hacked to clear the outer dungeons of them.
And this is where we see one of the greatest moments in this game.
As the lines that have separated the users, player killer, guildmate, medic, casual, pro, noob, they all come down. Because
We both love the world!
they love being in it, interacting with people here. It's their world, and they are going to fight for it. Kashtavajar similarly showcases the reunion of Team Only One Target, Bordeaux finally finding it in herself to return as well, seeking this new challenge. Hell, even Asta and Eoten join in.
But I think the crowning moment of this occurs in Arcade Home.
Hey now, don't just stand there.
Alcade, the Demon Palace Empress, has returned to the world.
Whoa! Hey now, what are you doing?
Don't you disappear on me like that again, okay?
Aww. What? It's a good moment!
Especially with how Taihaku and Sirius bring reinforcements from the Arena Elite. The stain Sakaki presented to them wiped clean. With everyone fighting, the Gamora spawn rate collapses, allowing the team to track Cubia to its location, meaning the final battle is upon them. There's a really good scene with everyone in the group reassuring the others they're going to make it through this before we enter its domain. And Cubia is a giant egg?
Symbolism! I'll explain later, it ties into the game's themes.
Everyone supports Haseo and gives him their powers, and together, the 7 of them call the only avatar capable of fending off the anti-existence.
I am the terror of death.
The big downside to Skaith III is, this is really the only battle you use him in. No, seriously. While the Bladed Wings are a nice touch, having made Skaith and by proxy Haseo now the world's Angel of Death, you're not really ever given time to appreciate it. And the whole segmented look he's sporting really does not gel well with the previous aesthetics for the avatars, and lacks the plant theme most of the rest have had. Cubia's a bitch to battle in this conflict, as for most of it, it is just toying with you. Hell, you're not even fighting the real Cubia, just the external shell, as is revealed when Haseo tries data drain when he thinks Protect Break occurs, only for nothing to happen. So, we do the blatantly stupid thing, and dive down the beast's gullet. Sure enough, the core is inside.
However, when you party up, do not take your best team immediately. You will lose access to them if you do. Why?
The black box data that allows for the creation of Cubia is the source of each and every doppelganger that has ever been encountered. Thus, it can spawn legions of them to protect its core, and the active party that's with you will be left behind to hold them off each time you do, allowing you to recruit more party members to repeat the same.
In a way, this makes a striking amount of sense, as Cubia is the anti-existence, essentially the shadow of the Twilight Dawn the world normally exists under, and the doppelganger is a dark reflection of the player. It's difficult, near impossible to defeat alone, but by being smart and rallying together, you stand a chance. The whole doppelganger thing made for great foreshadowing of this event.
Especially since the Gamora spawning and the doppelganger have split its power to so many fronts, its own abilities have weakened to the point Haseo and my preferred party can parry with this pestilence with nary a problem.
This is it! We're putting an end to it all!
The central core has over 10,000 hit points scattered via multiple redundancies, and it can still spawn Gamora to take its fire. So even with max level character and equipment, it's far from an easy battle. But even as we defeat it, Cubia plans to self-destruct into its own version of the Rebirth, which will destroy everything. So they unify once more, Haseo taking their powers for one final assault. And it's not enough.
So fortunate that the goddess, once made aware of the plights of her subjects and the steps they've taken to save themselves, is not as indifferent as she has led them to believe.
Pray now, as hard as you can.
And now, you have them all. Can we do it, Haseo?
Yeah, of course we can.
I
to this one attack!
And this is the moment Haseo surpasses Kite, bringing salvation to the world through their efforts, without sacrificing a single thing to achieve it. This is the miracle born of human will.
You could say there was an intervention from Aura and other players to achieve it. Sure. But those were present in the core games to achieve his victory as well. He had to give up the bracelet to stop Cubia. The Lost Ones had to intercede to break Carbonic's final barrier. He had to kill Aura to intercede on the Rebirth and the final Drain Heart. But both of these occurrences are appropriate to their build-ups and themes and established before the event, so it's not even coming off as Deus Ex Machina. While I admit that GU's climax is cheesier and buys into a lot of anime tropes, I feel it resonates a bit more with me.
And as Cubia dissolves, Haseo is given a moment with Ovan, effectively bookending things as they began. Ovan begins to fade again, still too weak from the aftermath of the Rebirth to really be back. Haseo still not knowing how to respond to everything he did, and regretting the lost chance.
He heard your lament, and the deepest wish of his heart was to answer you. The bonds between our souls are what drive the world. And it will be all of you who drive our new world. Now, you must go, little children of Morgana.
And so, it's over. The world and the network are back to normal, no Ida reoccurrences, things really begin wrapping up. Congratulations being passed around. The general user base at wit's end over CC Corp's bullcrap, which is in fact being investigated by the government after they falsified the data that began the manhunt over Ovan. There's some more flirting with Alcade, Raven cutting ties with CC Corp entirely, and at last, Haseo's goal is in sight. She's waiting at Hul Granz. Shino's woken up.
Long time.
To say the least.
Like Aina, Shino's been able to see snippets of what's been happening through the Ida network, seeing everything Haseo's done in an effort to save her. And she's not sure what to think of it either.
That man. He saw things through in a way only he could.
But this is when Adelie arrives, called by Shino. Because she knows.
You know, Haseo was always trying to cure you. He tried really hard. And for a long time.
I know.
Yeah. Anyway, well, goodbye. And good luck.
Wait!
That instinctual reaction is why she did this.
Let's start the Twilight Brigade again, with just the two of us. We'll go find Ovan.
To confront his feelings, and make him choose. Go back to how he was before everything. Turn his back on everything to stay with Shino, or accept that he's moved on, and found new things to value, and someone that will accept him the way he wanted Shino to.
Haseo? I saw it all. Everything. Now be honest with yourself.
The final stage of grief is acceptance. And now he can move on. And thus, finally free, Ryou Misaki has his whole life ahead of him.
But while the story is mostly over, we're not done yet, because now we have the post-game to explore.
I've already explained Natsume, and there's more than that. Because we've done all of the Abyss quests, we now have been given access to the Forest of Pain, which I will get to in a moment. We get Bordeaux's member address, now on more friendly terms, but she's still seeking the everlasting challenge he represents, while Aura cedes her knights to our command in the event another threat befalls the world.
Well, not this version of it, unfortunately.
The arena is now open again, finally, and the team who were the previous tournament champions want to see if they have a chance, since they were gypped by the PK tournament. We're given a new keyword, barbecue plate, in which you find the God Chim, which greatly increases the affection ratings of the party members, slashing the time needed for that immensely, and a new quest has opened up. Finally, there is the final entry of Online Jack.
They had previous episodes earlier. It really was not relevant to cover.
Hell, the only reason I bring it up is you're allowed a brief shot of Shino in real life as she passes between the cameras.
We didn't find out anything about anything. Not about the world or Ida.
Opposing mirrors of hope and despair. That's what Ida is.
So yes, they are admitting most of Online Jack was a waste of time. Worth it for those few seconds, though.
So let's start with a new quest. It's the finale to the Mecha Grunty series of quests. Dr. Keppel learning said Steambot has been kidnapped by one of his earlier creations, Proto-Gura, who's indignant as he's been disowned for being a failure and a malcontent.
Why didn't you just fix me? It was within your power to fix me.
It's more of a cycle of slavery thing relating to R2's lore, but...
And now, with great satisfaction, I am going to install the gear of malice inside of you.
No, you lunatic! You'll override his conscience circuit, make him destroy every robot including his brethren, and then he'll crush your head like an orange! You're repeating the finale to Kikai to the animation!
With the natural order!
But the bond between creator and creation are not so easily sundered, and Mecha Grunty breaks free. Gora's last resort is a bomb, but Mecha Grunty can fly, saving the adventurers' lives, and in turn being saved as Gura hates the sentiment behind its actions.
Farewell, Mecha Grunty!
Whoa!
I talk so much about this one, as it's really good. A definite payoff for refilling Mecha Grunty through all three games. I do consider it worth it.
The last, and I do mean last, doppelganger is ready for combat. Victory against it finally relinquishing Haseo's DG0, and if you collected all of the key items from Rebirth onwards, they change into a paired armor and accessory that is the best in the game.
And they are needed.
For the Sweepstakers are not an easy opponent even maxed out, the other self-armor really turning the tide.
So, at last, this leaves the Forest of Pain. And on top of it being a over 100 floor dungeon, I have another reason for normally avoiding it.
Tabby has returned to the game, and is waiting in the forest. Not its entrance, or early in as she implies she will be, but 50 fucking floors in.
You can tell with my hatred of Tabby that if there was no other reason to get through the areas, I'd just skip it entirely. But as I said, this is the last Abyss quest.
And the final part of the Cernunos event, threatening to revive itself in the deepest pits of the area. The best way to get through it is to use the Demon Safe Shoes or the item customization accessory that gives the same ability, as it cuts literal hours from traversing the dungeon.
Nope, seriously, I flew through it to its end without any unnecessary encounters, and it still took me 3 hours to get to the end of it.
I say necessary, as every so many floors, you have to fight one of the various non-Ida or Epitaph boss monsters, including revived versions of the Cernunnos we fought in Rebirth, and the One Sin. As I said, Tabby's on floor 50.
Haseo!
Hey!
You came!
Get off me!
And is the expected wasted nuisance. For the character has never added anything of value ever.
Having her here is simply a reminder that Roots was supposed to do something, and failed to.
She says she won't log in again, but she lies, sending us her member address. One I have never, nor will ever use. So we finally reach Cernunnos, who once more kills his servants, and is in turn killed by Death Incarnate. But only after a very long battle, where the most damage you're likely to do is 10 to 20 points off of a score that totals 9999. But slow and steady is the key, and you get the Dual Gunner Z.
A superfluous weapon that's just bragging rights, really, as everything you can fight, you've already killed.
But there's more to this, as this is the Forest of Pain. And thus, Haseo is called, once more, to the Herald AI.
Hey, Harold, we met your daughter, and she is doing well. I really wish at some point in this conversation that would have been brought up. It's not.
But the questions Harold asks are all informed by the journey Haseo's taken, and the things he now cherishes. And for that, he's granted a wish. Another chance to talk with Ovan, who assures him that he will return to them, all of them, in his own time, no matter how long it shall take. For that is the cycle of the world and the forces the two embody, the first end and the last beginning. These sentiments he shares with Shino, letting her know the wait she will endure for the one she loves will not be in vain.
And thus, we have come to the last event.
After obtaining Tabby's member address, we are sent a special gift card, which activates the wedding event.
Yeah, I teased and talked about this a few times before. Due to how you can earn affection in the game, you can become really intimately knowledgeable of pretty much any member of the cast you get a member address for, as you can only select them to take part in the event if you've taken the time to get to know and connect with them like in a real relationship, and maxing out their affection ratings, leaving it really open-ended who you can pick.
Some people have an issue against this kind of thing in video games, but I don't see why. If we connect to the characters, we end up wanting to see them turn out happy, no matter the medium. And if we've seen two characters build emotional ties and bonds, we likewise interpose our own wish to find the person that will make us happy onto them. The issue then becomes, is it justified within the context of the narrative?
For a number of them, they are. But some just end up really silly.
I can't hold back any longer.
Others less so, such as Bordeaux's, which places a different context in the role of her challenge. Shino's just ends up awkward, mainly due to the correspondence preceding the ability to do the event with her, showcasing how deeply she feels for Ovan, and the self-realization inherent in the pre-post-game ending.
So really, for me, it comes down to what I viewed as being a good relationship, which leaves 3 options. 2 of them involve Adelie, and 2 involve Alcade. All involve Haseo.
But as a polygamous relationship is out, damn it, Alcade isn't quite right a fit on her own. Despite Reminiscence's focus on her and the impact she's made, we've not been able to truly experience their live interactions enough to really justify such and how their casual interactions would play out beyond the aggressive persona we've experienced. Which leaves my real choice. The choice that has been repeatedly built through the hours of interactions. The choice the canon of the series most prominently pushes us towards is Chigusa Kusaka, a lonely woman who wanted someone to see and value her without expectation that has grown strong, and a lonely man who wanted someone to reach out, but let him come to them on his own terms. Through these games, they've come to truly accept and understand each other, as even though when they met they could not see the other's view, trapped as they were, their effect on the other has made them better, pushed them to be better than they were before. She taught him to be kind, the true value of what he was fighting for, and he in turn helped her acknowledge the strength within herself. And so, as the final scene of GU plays out, I see them off, with everyone they met and value, walking together in this world, grasping each other's gentle hands.
And that was Dot Hack Redemption and the Dot Hack GU Trilogy, my favorite RPG. And after all the effort I put into showcasing it, it's graduated into my favorite game of all time.
And I hope by now you understand why that is. It's the hero's journey, an epic adventure, a character piece, a love story, a quest for redemption, and even has elements of a slice-of-life comedy, all tied up in a cyberpunk setup where you're placed in a steampunk MMO. Its characters are diverse and developed, changing over time as you are showcased their interaction, and always come off as people. The gameplay is excellent, not without its flaws, but to no significant detriment of the experience, and it builds upon everything it establishes with homages and references that came before it only when necessary to tease two events without making it about those events. Such events that are foreshadowed pay off magnificently and call back to one another with similar dialogue that is just so organic. I might have my issues with the translation team in big and small ways.
The final incident to this day remains absolutely undefensible, and yet frustratingly consistent with the work of Bandai of America.
But the localization continues to be the best I've seen in years, showing how good they could be now if they bothered to put in effort and value into their products. This is honestly some of the best work I've experienced from this cast in their careers, many of which I have a personal connection to from other productions they have been on. The music I've barely touched on, but I've tried to play pieces of in every video to pay respect to it. It's magnificent. The composer Chikayo Fukuda deserves accolades for it, as does Tomoyo Mitani, who is responsible for singing every song involving lyrics. And since first hearing the soundtrack years ago, Yashashi Ryote, also known as Gentle Hands, has never left my MP3 player. Each song perfectly matches the build, tone, and settings, used masterfully by the production team to achieve the greatest impact in each scene. The graphics I feel hold up rather well too. Two at least things that were being made as recently as 2012, and this was made for the PS2.
It would not be that difficult for Bandai to commission CyberConnect to do an HD update and collection. Hell, digital release to the PSN. I've already got money for it in reserve. You would take my money. You would take other people's money and use copies of every .hack game currently are bought and sold for over twice their original retail price. Funimation is re-releasing the anime on DVD, and that has been heavily pre-ordered. Why do you not want our money?
And the majority of the changes made from its original drafts all work to benefit the piece. Taking all three parts together as one whole experience, I believe it to be one of the greatest games ever made. I know not many would share that opinion, and it certainly has some tough competition to get on that list, but it's what I believe.
Unfortunately, despite that belief, it's more likely to be the greatest trilogy of games that effectively no one played.
And I get why, despite myself. Specifically in Redemption's case, as it plays far too much into cliché anime tropes for the story in this entry that have never been the strength of the .hack series, coming off as really cheesy. It falls short of being a satisfying finale, in spite of the mainline events giving a good conclusion to the main story. There's simply too many side things that just stop without resolution. I think the wedding event was meant to close out the chapter on some, but as you can only do it once legitimately without having to reload saves, and everybody being in a relationship with Haseo would just be ridiculous, that's not a satisfying option.
And none of that is dealt with in Returner. The only parts it's touched on are in the post-Cubia emails, which, admittedly, is something.
With respect to the series as a whole, Bandai of America really screwed it over with both release and advertisement, going under most people's radar, even to .hack fans. And I think its obscurity compounded with the perception of, oh, I gotta do all this stuff to even know thing one about this, so why even bother? Made it seem as unworthy of people's time by critics. And once more, the splitting of the story over multiple releases versus the length of the game was seen as a major detriment despite its necessity with the game's design and overall consistent quality. Compounded, of course, by the perception of, it's just a game, it doesn't matter, increased another tier by the setting being primarily a game within a game. Past that was the maturity rating, which, while I totally get why it was rated teen, when I was a teenager, most of my peers were really focused on action games, shooters, or things with an M rating, and continue to be to this day, preferring content to be graphic in some form, which said game within game status disconnected one from, and could perceive the initial entry as commentary on the fact that a lot of teens tend to be assholes. The central point, themes, and symbolism, as I've researched, were not appreciated, and I know still are not to this day, with respect to a lot of other material not limited to .hack, despite the entirety of GU being based around one surprisingly simple concept, shown in the avatars, the characters, and their developments, alongside the scenarios the game puts us through.
The theme is, even in the name, GU, what those initials stand for. They give you so many options and diversions from it, but it's so obvious it's for one simple phrase. Grow up.
The game is about growing up, out of adolescence and becoming a better person. Not by giving up the things you love or by changing the core of who you are, but by being conscious of others and your impact upon the world. It teaches empathy to its players by endeavoring to be able to connect to anyone and everyone that might come across it. And the situations, though exaggerated for the narrative, are comparable to ones we encounter and rally against in real life. There are always going to be bullies. There are always going to be the thought police condemning from a point of ignorance or selfishness. There are always going to be people you have to tolerate and put up with. People doing horrific things for good reasons you just can't see, and suffer condemnations from people that just don't understand nor try to understand what you intend. But that's okay. That's life. The human experience in a nutshell. We are all different, and we can be made better, offset the awful in our lives through interactions with others, by trying to understand one another. That's why we connect to other people, value those bonds we make, and why, at the end of it all, we can look back at the good and bad in our lives and find we did okay. Growing up is just a stage in our lives that this game is reflective of.
These games, with all the emotions they invoke in me, is one I'm never going to give up. That is now the .hack shelf. And when these discs fail, I have copies of the game data and a PS2 emulator waiting in reserve.
It's not perfect, Redemption especially. I accept that. It has its flaws and bad decisions, and fucking roots that hurt its intentions. But despite that, its core message I feel shines through, and does not hinder my proclamations of this game as being one that should be shown more love than it's given.
And if nothing else, if I've convinced even one person to track down a copy of any of these, be it physical or digital, legitimate or bootleg, I will consider this entire endeavor a success. It is so worth your time to expose yourself to its full splendor, which these videos cannot even hold a candle to.
There are a few more entries part of the GU content I still have to cover. Returner, the novels, and the movie, as well as the final era of the Dot Hack franchise, but those will come in time.
And I'll be discussing returners soon enough to close out this series canon. But before we go, to CyberConnect, to Namco Bandai, to the voice actors, to everyone that worked on this game and contributed to its majesty, thank you. Just thank you so much for doing your part in creating this experience. I can't express enough how much this means to me. This is something, one of the true things that makes me happy, truly happy, and faults and all, I will treasure these games for the rest of my life. That is how much of an impact it has left upon me. And I do hope the time you spent part of its production was a good one. Thank you, and good night.
きっときっと越えられるから遠回りかもしれないけれど未来はきっと明るいから信じて進むからもっともっと強くなるから泣かないように見守っていて君の眼差し優しい声思い出に変えるから遠い記憶かすかに香る記憶かすかに香る優しく君